Hello.
Hey,
I'm good.
is it still good now?
Yeah.
All
Rock,
right.
rock and roll.
All right. Welcome to the Side Action Podcast, episode 87. This is the 18th episode of season 3. My name is Jim Weglars, aka Wegs. You can follow me at Wegspool on Twitter and Instagram.
And this is Steve Roberts, aka Action. You can follow me on Twitter at 31S Roberts.
Follow the podcast, the Side Action Pod, on Twitter and also on YouTube. So, Action, we've got obviously a special guest here. We'll introduce him in a minute. How was your week? How was your weekend? We obviously finished up week 17. We did really well in the contest. Too bad it was a little too late.
Yeah, a great weekend for me. Despite a pretty large loss on Clemson in the national semifinal on Friday, I
Yep.
still killed it Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Very positive outcome for my bankroll. So
Nice.
it was enjoyable. Stayed in most of the time, as per usual. But how about
Okay.
you?
I did have another date. I went to a
Oh,
rooftop place, Jay Parker. Really nice spot. It's got a retractable roof, so it's glass. So the date can feel warm, but you can still meet the guidelines of COVID. So pretty good. Other than that, I forgot I got drunk at the Four Shadows again, but that was Saturday. Um, and of course, Art Murphy, he's Optimus Prime. He did not make it. Artemis Prime did not make it out. Shocker. So I had to drink by myself. But I met some
man.
new friends and had a good time with the guys, Matt and Rob over there. So good
So
times.
I have a question about the retractable roof. Does it go back and forth throughout the night, or is it like partially open? What's the
No,
protocol?
it's actually completely closed right now.
Okay,
They have it for the summer. I'm sure it's open. They did have some doors open,
I
so there were
see.
there was some pure outdoor seating with some like fire pits or something. But we were actually inside, and they had us seated kind of at the perimeter of the glass area, and I think they had windows spaced out. I think it has to be within 25 feet of the open window or whatever. So. It's a
Right
nice
on.
setup, though. Really good place. Really pretty view of Lincoln Park. So it's at the Hotel Lincoln, so it's
Hmm.
on top of Lincoln Park there. So it's really nice.
Yeah,
So
great date spot for sure. Nice
hey,
choice.
trying to impress once in a while. So hey, let's get to the main act here. We've got a buddy here of mine who's on today, and just to let you know, outside of obviously our contest that we've done with Circa, I've done the ATS against the spread contest for I don't know 5, 7 years now, and my buddy Jim Donnan, we just call him Donnan, has run this pool for many years. And it seems over the last couple of years, the guy's figured it out. He's 3 years running champ, even if I was up most of the year. And then all of a sudden, slowly Donnan catches you up. He kind of catches from behind. He's got an alt style. So I thought I'd get him on here. I wanted to introduce him, and maybe he can show us what the mastery of winning this pool. I mean, it's only like 10 guys, but still, I mean, it's hard to win a pool back to back to back like that. So, Mr. Donnan, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, you guys. Yeah, as far as my weekend went, it was very much nervously waiting for Sunday, nervously waiting for the Bears game, but then of course going into the weekend, I had to hopefully get the third year in a row. So yeah, it was a nervous weekend, but did all the research. So
And more
felt
importantly, you beat
felt
Schwa. That's the most important thing here. You beat Schwa.
you
That's all
would
that
be
matters.
you'd be amazed at the amount of hope there was of you got to beat him. So
Wow, 3 years in a row. I hadn't heard that part of the story. That's pretty
Yes.
epic.
Yeah.
yeah, it was the first year uh, took second, got killed, and then something clicked in my head, and then did pretty well. And actually, year one, year two, I usually do kind of get a lead,
Mhm.
and then kind of try to sustain the rest of the year. This year, I was in last place at one point.
Wow.
Mhm.
That made me extra nervous going week to week. But I was just trying to take little bites as the weeks went along, and even made a spreadsheet
Yeah.
to track. Yes, I was in last place week 6 or 7 or something like that.
Well,
So
and like 2 years ago, Don, and I mean, I track this. Of course, that's what I do. I track stuff. But like 2 years ago, this guy we have to pick, and just so everybody knows for this against the spread pool, it's pick every game against the spread. There's static lines. They do have a hook in every one, and they are set on Tuesday. So they're set very early. Sometimes that can benefit you,
Mhm.
but in the end, I would say on average, the book usually comes out even with a static line about 50-50, maybe a little under 50% if you picked all favorites. 2 years ago, or maybe last year, Donnan was 57%. I mean, he crushed it. I mean, he
Wow.
beat people by about 12 picks. I think it was 2 years ago, Donnan.
Yeah.
And so it's not like it's magic here. I think you've got something going, so that's why we wanted you on the pod.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I just wanted to kind of go through
Yeah.
kind of I go to two sites. I live on one and I check another one a little bit, but just kind of wanted to walk through a
Sure.
little bit of the logic that I use to get through it.
Yeah, share.
Even before I get to the website,
Mhm.
like early in the year, the website that I go to, we don't have any stats, we don't have any kind of information for me to start kind of trying to fly through. I really
Yep.
kind of just rely on one magazine. I try to read the magazine as much as I can, get a little bit of background information on everyone, check for injuries, anything new online. But for like week 1, week 2, week 3, I'm really kind of just relying on that first piece of information from the book, and then just try to keep looking at the stats that are on there. So let's try sharing the screen, see what happens.
Yeah. Yeah. Exciting.
Even more impressive that you pick all games every week. I mean, the one advantage we have as bettors is being able to be selective, pick a handful.
And what I was talking to Wegs about was I would have a really hard time trying to select 5 games.
Mhm.
I really I don't have accounts yet. Like literally this is kind of the one that I do, but it's trying to pick all those games that I really enjoy, because I know there would be one game where I would like regret not picking that one. So I'd have a really hard time not picking every game.
Yeah.
So,
It is challenging. We usually get down. You don't listen to the podcast that much, Donnan, but we usually around 7, 8 games, and we kind of pare it down to the 5. It does come down. This year we started ranking the games. What's our top pick down to 5 to try to, kind of figure out if we're on the right track, because it isn't. It's an art and a science at the same time. So
yeah, I don't want to skew myself on how you might pick, and I'm trying to chase you all year long. So
Yeah.
I actually did see one where on the it was like Colts plus 3.5. I'm like, I bet he goes Colts 3.5. Must be. It's like, so that was all part of it. I can't skew my head. So
Yeah.
let me. All right, here. Let me try the sharing the screen. So like I said, I go through the 2 weeks and then 3 weeks. So then. So the site.
Nice.
Can you see anything?
Yeah.
Yeah. We see Pro Football Reference. Yep.
This is honestly where I live.
Okay.
This is the like you said, we get the message of here's the point spreads, and this is my go-to. So what I normally do is I try to just, from that week 2, week 3, week 4, I start looking at, okay, if it's going to be Buffalo versus Miami or whatever, I first go into I go into whatever team the game is,
Mm-hmm.
and then I'm gonna keep pointing out like where my eye goes. First thing I'm trying to look at is, okay, we have an idea of what the teams are supposed to be. I kind of have an idea of how I think the game's going to go. I try to go into this to try to remove all that, bias and anything. I'm trying to just look at the stats and see what they say. So in this case, the first place I look is I'm looking at the points for, points against. What kind of team is this? I'm glancing at, okay, they're second in the league. Here's the points of what I'm looking for.
Mm-hmm.
And also just keep in mind, it's not like I can just jump into this in week 8. I really think this is a process of, because I'm looking at this from the beginning of the year and all the information that I go through,
Right.
looking at that throughout the year, you start seeing things and start understanding trends as you're just trying to compile the information into your head as I'm going through this.
Okay.
So looking at that, that's like the first glance. Let me know if it's like really hard to see or anything like that. But then I look down here and I'm looking at, okay, we already saw where the offense and defense rank.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm looking at where they rank with yards and the points.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just kind of gliding through here saying, okay, so here we are. Okay, they're okay, great offense, more about passing, less about running. So I'm really I'm staring at this. I'm staring at, per attempt.
Okay.
Looking at yards per attempt there,
Mm-hmm.
and just trying to feel for what the team is.
And
Right,
those are passing yards per attempt, it looks like, and rushing yards per attempt.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm looking at that and just kind of seeing where they rank, and then later on I'll kind of go into a little bit of things that can be misleading. So I'm looking at this. You see there's a ton of attempts. Yards are okay. Yards per attempt. This is what scared me all year about the Bills. Is about how they are against the run. And if someone tried running the ball against them, what the issues could be. Plus, they had some injuries with the linebackers early on in the year where I thought they'd be better and they weren't doing as well. But
like someone like Jonathan Taylor, for example.
So, there's the stats to look at. There's the where they are in just how the team is. The other aspect of it is what I've started to notice, and I don't know if it's just because of how the league has been, because I think it's been difficult to pick games ever since 1999. But what I started noticing is what I love having all this information right here is I love the fact that I can just see, okay, how did they won, lost, won. I'm trying to pick up. There seems like one or two games. If you play a high energy game, you're not going to do as well the following week. Right. So what I liked about this is it helps me just keep track of, okay, let's see, they played, you're playing the Patriots. You got another high energy game that you're playing against the Seahawks. They're pretty jacked up for that. It's going to be pretty difficult now to go on the road and play the Cardinals. So in that sense, I like using this just to see, okay, I keep saying it's like a high energy game. It's hard to keep it up for that many weeks in a row. Mm-hmm. So for something like that, I would look at that and say, okay, they had to spend a lot against a division rival here against the Patriots. Then they had to go, then they had to play the Seahawks, tough game. And then then you're going on the road to play the Cardinals. So in that kind of a thing, that's where I start saying, okay, I know what the stats say. They might be a way better team, but there's also that kind of, hey, you're not going to sustain every single week to try to, be as good of a team as you might be. So that's where I love having this information talking about, going week to week to week to see how the games went, and using that as can they keep doing this repeatedly after every week.
Yeah, the class you're looking for letdown spots. You're like, okay, it's going to be
looking for letdowns, looking for the trap game,
sure,
type of a thing. And even so, it's you can be a good team, but it's really hard to do this every single week. So I love I just keeping track of what my thoughts were as I'm walking through this. Yeah, it was a high energy game. How are they possibly going to do this for another week? And the Steelers were a good example of that.
Mm-hmm.
If you're looking at that Cowboys game,
sure.
They
lost that.
There was Ravens, Titans, Ravens, and then you get to the Cowboys.
Mm-hmm.
That was pretty hard to do.
Yep.
So that's it. So that's kind of this section here that I take a look at. This is third down conversions, and I'm just trying to get a feel of like, okay, this is how they're staying in games. They're doing a good job on third down of seeing of getting off the field. So that's I'm always I'm always staring at that.
Mm-hmm.
Not necessarily fourth down, it's rarely. Then as I'm going through these teams, I go down to defense, and this is what I talked about as far as looking at this information from week to week to week.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's a couple of spots that I go to. A, just for stats because I just love it, but I'm usually sorting on sacks.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't want to sort right now. No, doesn't want to sort.
That's okay. You can normally can sort. Gotcha.
So, looking at sacks. The other one I'm looking at is TFL, tackles for loss.
Okay.
Trying to see who those impact players are.
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm seeing a lot of TFL, as a team, I'm seeing a lot of TFLs. Means they're pretty, you're doing a solid job. I'm seeing how the guys, who the guys are that are getting all the TFLs, and then it helps me. Okay, that guy's injured. Oh crap! What am I gonna do with that?
Mm-hmm.
Also looking at pass defended.
Okay.
So then so that kind of gives me an idea of like, again, what kind of team is this? If this guy gets injured, what kind of impact is that going to be? Because there was I don't remember if it was last year or the year before that. Buda Baker. If Buda Baker was not playing, there's no way I'm picking the Cardinals.
Simple.
So that was a kind of a tell for me.
So these defensive metrics you're using to kind of cross-reference against the injury report in most cases to determine if any of their major impact players are sitting?
Yeah, just seeing.
Okay.
Yeah, if they ever get hurt, what happens? But also just still kind of getting a picture in my head of what this team is about. If I'm seeing a ton of guys with TFLs and just playing out of their minds with sacks and getting pressure, then it just kind of tells me, okay, I'm going to roll with this team, and I kind of trust what they're going to be. So it just kind of helps me get a better feel of, because then you start looking at the TFLs, then you start going down the rabbit hole of, okay, this guy's been on the team for 4 years, really understands the system, and then just then it goes into my head of how I would draft my own team type of stuff. Right. So
how does that factor into the spread though, Donnan? So how are you, obviously you're talking about generally you like a team, you're thinking, okay, they might have a letdown spot at Arizona or something like that. How are you evaluating that against the spreads that come out in the contest?
I'm using that as maybe not even with covering or whatever, just like, is this team going to be up for this game? Like in that example of, carrying it over. Sure. I'm doing this just to kind of I'm trying to collect all this information to get a feel for what the team is, because then it's going to carry over from week to week to week for me to get an understanding of what it is, of what kind of team this is.
The teams you trust more as it goes on or given a certain spot.
Yeah, just seeing how they play and based on how things go here.
Mm-hmm.
So once I start getting, I continually go through, see where the stats are. Then I do a lot of going into the actual defensive stats.
And this is still on Pro Football Reference. You're going, just for listeners, going to the defensive stats section. You're doing it by team defense.
Yeah, so this is all team defense. Like before, and then like I did show you guys the defense and looking at TFLs and looking at the pass defended. I do sort on the running backs, see what the wide receivers are doing, who yards per catch, and how they're playing their game again, just to confirm, to know, okay, this is what I think I'm seeing the team doing. This is what the stats are showing. Where is that all coming from? And it's all kind of just trying to collect it in my head and make these decisions as far as how I'm going to pick a team. So when I come in here, well, of course, it still doesn't want to sort for me. So what I'm looking at here is I might be showing like, okay, I'm going against the Buccaneers. Buccaneers are playing the Redskins.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to look at, okay, this yards per play.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd sort on yards per play. I'm trying to get a feel for, okay, we know it's a good defense. you might what can happen is, okay, you have a great yards per attempt, on defense, or you might have a terrible yards per attempt for your rushing defense, but that's because you're, say, the Chiefs and you're ahead, and the only runs you're giving up are a draw at the end of a game if someone's trying to get a first down. So I'm trying to weed through the information of saying, okay, they're bad there, but there's a reason for it. Like Buccaneers are just incredible for the last 2 years against the rush, and that's just period. They're good at it. Even when their big defensive tackle went down, they've kind of sustained. So that was the thing. So I'm trying to go through there and trying to make sure that the stats that I'm seeing make sense. So like I said, with Packers might be terrible at runs against, which they actually are. But I'm trying to see if there's a reason behind it. And it's kind of the opposite as well. I might be a good team and my yards per attempt may not be that great. Well, the reason why I have great yards per attempt, or I don't have good yards per attempt, is because I'm just trying to run the clock out at the end of the game, and they already know I'm going to run. So I'm trying to just take those factors into account to be like, okay, I can feel comfortable that they are good against the run, or they are good at running the ball, that the stats aren't showing that information. So as I'm going through it throughout the whole year, that helps me. So that's just, I like to have the total yards per attempt for the defense, and then just kind of seeing what the passing and rushing information is.
Okay.
And is this a process that you would go through for every matchup every week?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. I'm clicking for every game, and I'm talking as I'm going through this, but my eyeballs going to certain spots when I'm looking at the individual teams, and it actually sorts, not on this computer for some reason, but it normally sorts.
Maybe the Skype is doing something. Yeah.
So kind of an example I was going to give you guys is if I could have sorted this. So this is just another one of the defense stats.
So the team advanced stats that they're showing on Pro Football Reference.
So down here it's showing a blitz percent. So there was a game where I was not quite sure how this quarterback was doing it. And shame on me, I can't remember who that quarterback was. But what I did was I walked through, and what I started noticing was, okay, when this quarterback played the Colts,
okay,
he did great. When this guy played the Cowboys, he did great. But what I started noticing was he did terrible anytime there's a high blitzing team. So when I started walking through that and saying, oh, there was a total trend of, hey, this guy is terrible.
It's probably Jared Goff, but
Baker Mayfield.
Shame on me. Yeah, and shame on me. I can't recall who it was, but that's the kind of information that I like seeing here, and what they're doing.
Now you said there was another site that you used too, and how does that?
Well, yeah. As soon as that's kind of everything as far as what I look at for the team. I guess the other kind of thing I like looking at, the last thing on here is the injury report.
So Pro Football Reference injury report shows all those guys every week.
So now what this is showing me is like, I gave you the example of Budda Baker. There's a defensive end on the Colts, Autry. He was hurt. Yeah, there he goes. He was out. And then once he came back, kind of turned it around. So this is nice to be like, oh, they were doing terrible for a long time, but then this guy was out. So once that player comes back in, that's why I like having this chart to show. Sure. If someone was out, and I can pick up, I can see where it came from.
Now, are you tracking that on a separate spreadsheet of your own, or are you just kind of doing a beautiful mind situation where you're kind of thinking through it and saying, okay, the Colts are, they lost these 3 games with that guy you're talking about, Autry, and now we got him back. I mean, are you tracking it, or are you just kind of putting it all in the brain right there?
Staring at the screen way too much, trying to absorb that in. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Those injury reports are fascinating. You can see
I like them.
the matrix all the way back throughout the season. I didn't know that existed.
Yeah. It's pretty helpful to see that. So that's definitely like that. This is I get all those thoughts like you said. Beautiful mind. try to get everything worked out in my head of how I feel things are going to go based on what I'm walking through for each team every week, and then I usually go to let's see, Vegas Insider.
Okay.
What I love about Vegas Insider.
And this is a free site, Donnan, or you have to pay?
Free site.
Okay.
Yeah, VegasInsider.com.
Mm-hmm.
What I love about this site is and I don't go here until I've got everything in my head, and I kind of need that. Yes, this is move forward with this. You go into odds, you go into matchup.
Okay.
Betting trend movement.
Okay, betting trend movement. Okay.
Betting trend movement versus the line.
Okay.
So what this is doing now is saying, okay, all the money, the early money on this, we're talking about, January 3rd, and 40. Immediately when this point spread of +7 came out, 61% of the money started going on the Bills -7.
Okay.
And you can see, look at it. You start to see like all this money starts getting thrown on there. So this you're seeing 90% of the money is getting thrown onto the Bills. So but the important part of this is early on. This is all the sharks in Vegas.
Yeah, sharp money.
So
right.
the early lines. Once you start getting down here, it's all public, and it all starts usually flowing to the favorite. But this is where I go to. This is that other site that I go to try to decide. Yeah, that's it reinforces it for me as far as what goes on, and it's not perfect. Every time you see the Sharks doing that, there were two games this year where I was like, my jaw dropped with the Saints Vikings game. Like I think that was Christmas. The Saints Viking game, it was like 90% of the money. It was way too much on the Vikings. And I had to go back and keep staring at things and make sure I wasn't losing my mind and go with it. So,
but you usually follow the money, is what you're saying, though.
It more or less reaffirms what I do. It reaffirms what I do, or I try to go, what did I possibly miss if this was a little bit off. Doesn't mean I automatically change it. I try to find a good reason for keeping it. It was yeah.
In this case, I mean, you see right away for this game, it opened up at 7, and despite majority of those bets landing on the Bills, the odds makers still moved the line in favor of the Colts. So
it
should tell a story.
There's definitely weird things that happen.
Yeah, and it's a weird. We're going to talk about that game in a little bit, so maybe we'll come back to this. But this is great. So just so then obviously Steve already referenced it. How long has this process taken you, buddy? A while, huh?
2.5 hours.
Okay, that's not that bad.
No, this is my lock myself in the office and stare at things. And if it's not,
you've been doing it for a couple of years, so it's not like it's
and if it's not 2.5 hours, it could be 3 hours of where I'm just trying to stare at these things and try to see if it makes sense.
And for your contest in particular, when are the picks due? Is it right before game time? And
5 minutes before.
Okay. So you're normally doing this on a Sunday morning. You sit down with your coffee and go through the numbers.
Yes.
Okay.
100%.
Right. So you're looking at the late information. And obviously, Steve, you can actually make a pick on Monday night, last pick if you want to make. And that's, we could talk about that contest another time. But, late in the season, you got to try to figure out what Donnan's not going to do to try to catch him. It's
Sure.
like, that's what I try to do. It's impossible because then I'm like, what? We picked the same again. I got to make up 4 picks. So.
Yeah. And a contest of that size, the game theory becomes all more important when you're battling 9 other opponents.
Exactly. Well, Donnan, this is great, man. This is really good information.
Yeah, it's a lot of staring at it, and it is a lot of, I don't have any particular go-to stats. Again, turnovers would be another one, but it's that throughout the year, trying to absorb that information. That's where I, and then just overall, I'm usually trying to pick, the underdog.
Yeah.
I'm always trying.
He's Captain Underdog. I noticed that years ago.
I'm trying to find an angle always to take the underdog.
You and Action would be best friends. You guys would be best friends. So, let's jump out of the share screen and let's jump into the episode because I think we can use some of this information going forward. So, there we go. Stop sharing. All right. So let's jump in and let's first of all, let's talk about last week. Donnan won the ATS picks. Congratulations again. He actually had to hold off a late charge. There were, first of all, Schwab made a late charge late in the season, but then our buddy Frange made a huge push in the last 2 weeks. Like he got 11 out of 16 right in the last week, and he jumped me. Like I was in first, second all year, and I fell to 4th by the end because these guys made the charge. But
he was like I said, I was in last in week 6 or 7, and I was 7 down.
Right.
He was down 8 with 2 weeks to go.
Yeah. He came in second.
He got the second.
Mm-hmm. He came within 2, I think. So.
Right.
So here's the recap from week 17. This is obviously the closing numbers, what I report down. And so we had 7 home teams and 9 road teams win last week. Favorites 6 only, and dogs 9. We had a push last week, at least the closing number I saw. The totals flipped over, though, 10 overs and 6 unders on the week, which has been just a kind of a roller coaster. We've talked about that, Donnan, and Action and I talk all the time about it. It was kind of like over city, then under city, and now it's kind of hard to predict. But the last couple of weeks, it's been split down the middle. This was a little different sided, wasn't it, Action?
Yeah, I mean, you still had some pretty high-scoring games, though, when you're talking about totals. But a lot of underdogs and pretty split for home and road. I think I read somewhere this week that this was the highest-scoring season in NFL history.
Yeah,
so
makes sense.
I don't know if you can attribute that to the lack of fans, probably to some degree. But I just think that the game of football is changing as well. More passing and more passing on early downs specifically.
No question.
Yeah.
So I just have some positives from the week. First of all, which we'll talk about later, the Ravens run game. This team has turned the corner. Obviously, their schedule turned the corner, went down, but they crushed it again, 38-3 against Cincinnati, racking up 404 yards against the Bengals, over 1,300 yards in the last, is it 5 games, I think it is. This team is doing what they do best and run the football. Now, maybe they're beating up on some bad opponents, but this is their brand of football, and they seem healthy and running. So not sure what's going to happen in the playoffs.
Good, thanks.
Yeah, I guess we'll talk about that in a minute. The next one is the Bills' complete run, which I'm glad you brought this up, Donnan, in your presentation. The Bills have won 6 straight. They've also covered the spread 6 straight times. They crushed the Dolphins 56-26. They earned their first AFC East title since 1995. Obviously playing great. I don't love their matchup, a little preview for later, but they're definitely playing good football. I'll just kind of roll through these since we had a longer presentation. Yeah. The last thing is my boy King Henry. He feasted, dude. I mean, this guy, over 2,000 yards. It's a bummer that he's not going to win the MVP. One, because I have a ticket on him, But secondly, because I think the last like 5 guys who've run it for 2,000 yards have won the MVP, but Rodgers pretty much has it locked up. He finished with 250 yards against the Houston and 2 touchdowns, and they barely won the game though, 41-38, another shootout in the AFC South, but they were able to take the division crown, which we'll see if they wanted that. They didn't try to avoid the Ravens like we thought, did they, Action?
No. And one thing this just reminded me of that I picked up on this weekend, I saw a number of instances where players were getting a little bit more feeds, whether it be in the passing game or the running game, to try and eclipse records or contract incentives. And that's a little nugget that I filed away for player props going into week 17 next season. You saw not only Derrick Henry go over 2,000 yards, but the rookie receiver Justin Jefferson for the Vikings break Anquan Bolden's record, as well as several receivers that picked up reception bonuses. Antonio Brown was one of them. Emmanuel Sanders, I think, was another one. So certainly can attack those player props next year going into week 17.
Good call. Might be a nice pivot instead of picking against the spread. Negatives. Well, let's start. We won't talk long about this because everybody's talked about it in media for days. But Doug Peterson, first of all, he's garbage. But secondly, it just was a mystery what he did on Monday night, Sunday Night Football, not kicking the field goal down 3. Then he switches to Nate Sudfeld. Nobody knew what he was going to do that, or he told some people, I guess, but it looked like it was a shocker to Hurts. And then they proceeded to lose the game 23-17, giving the division to the former Redskins, the Washington football team. Giants fans and Giants players all over Twitter were just like, what the fuck?
Yeah, I was happy I wasn't watching that game because I would have been pissed. How could you possibly do that?
I don't know. It's disappointing, but it was our contest pick. So last thing is the Cardinals without Murray. Now, granted, they didn't make the playoffs, so it doesn't matter, but this team was markedly different without Murray. When he was kind of banged up, he was still playing. That was one of those trends you probably saw, Donnan, in your picks throughout the middle of the season. And then he got healthy, but then he got hurt again on Sunday, and they could not beat the Rams in this game despite Jared Goff being out, losing 18-7. They lost him in the first drive of the game. They could only get 212 yards in the game. Now, granted, the Rams are a great defense, but they had their chance because the Bears obviously lost to the Pack. So
big Cardinal fan, big defensive coordinator fan. What happened with the Cardinals too is they lost their 2 defensive tackles for the year. So that was I couldn't quite remember if they were on IR, but I think they would have definitely made the playoffs if they kept those 2 guys.
Yeah. This one for me was a live betting special because I was watching with Melissa, who's also a big Cardinals fan. And as soon as I saw Kyler limp to the locker room, I knew that both offenses were going to be in a serious struggle to score. And I hit the live under several times, 42, 40, 40, 41, and 39. They all came in, obviously, with the second half scoring demise. So that was a good one for me.
Your guy, Broccoli Bob, would have been very happy with you.
He usually live bets overs, though.
I know, exactly. So just to wrap up the circuit contest for us, we went 4-1 last week, so we did finish strong, thankfully. On the season, we were 44, 39, and 2. That's 53%, 53.01%. That's for 626th place. Pretty good. We obviously wanted better. I mean, again, we were kind of in that 200, 300th range with only 3-4 weeks to go, so we were kind of disappointed. The winner did finish with 57 and 28 on the season. That's 67%. To hit the money in the top 50 was 51 and 34, which is 60%, which ironically we talked at the beginning of the season, which we were right there early in most of the season. If we could do that next year, actually, we'll get the money. The last thing was last place was 28 and 57. So about 33%, and that guy won $100,000. So I don't know, any thoughts, Action? I know we had a good year, pretty good year.
Yeah, we got this nice hat. So got that going for us. It was fun. I'm glad that we did it again. And I know you and I love talking football, and we could do it any week. So I enjoy that the most. And hopefully we'll get into the money next season.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I've already invited Donnan, even though we'll see if he'll be able to make it out to Circa with us next year to make the picks.
Very intriguing. Very intriguing.
His first question is, do they withhold money if you win?
Yes, I think so. Well, we could always look at adding a third partner into the group and perhaps go after the survivor as well.
Oh
We'll
yeah,
see.
we were talking about doing that next year. They have a Survivor contest too, Donnan. So, okay, so the let's go over some injuries, and maybe we can do this game by game with the just kind of merge it. So the Colts and Bills are the first game on the ticket here, and obviously they're playing at Buffalo. Let's talk about the open. I'll just jump and merge here. So we're behind. So we've got it open at, as we talked about 6.5 or so, 52-point total. I'm seeing it around that 6.5 mark. It's kind of hovering in that 6.5, 7 range as Donnan was kind of presenting. 50 down to 51.5 point total. Let me just review the injuries before we start talking. In this game, the injuries of note that I have, action is from Indy, just so you know, Donnan. So your guy, Rock Yassin, is out with a concussion this week, which is kind of a bummer. DeForest Buckner, he actually practiced in limited fashion today, but he's key to that team. And then the two Buffalo receivers, Diggs and Beasley, they did both practice in a limited fashion. Diggs has an oblique and Beasley has a knee issue, but I think they'll probably both play. So what are your opening thoughts on that action?
Well, I think Donnan led us right to the water there earlier when we were going through some of those stats on Pro Football Reference. And I like the Colts, and I think everything that we looked at on the screen earlier just screams that the Colts are the play in this game.
Right.
Despite losing Anthony Costanzo, you've seen Jonathan Taylor in that run game just go on a tear the last several weeks. And I think this adds up for a big day for Jonathan Taylor. And they signed a new left tackle off the streets, Jared Veldevere or something, who was quite serviceable. And I think that the Colts are in prime position to cover this game. Despite Buffalo covering an 8 straight, they have not laid 7 points except for once this season, twice if you count the Jets.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a big number for Buffalo, I think. What do you guys think?
Well, I'll start first, Donnan, because I do have a question for you at the end of this. I'm all over the Colts too. I do, to catch Donnan up, I do an index and kind of similar to what you do, just kind of do it in numerical fashion. Look at all these different factors, and these teams are dead even in the index. They're very good teams. The Colts are definitely an underrated, whatever they are, 7 seed or something. But I'm a little worried looking at the money though. Like when I'm with you, Action, in terms of the 6.5 seems like too many points, and I love the Taylor angle, and I know that they're going to run the ball. I'm just worried that all the sharps were pounding the Buffalo, and didn't matter what the number was it 7 or 6.5. So kick it over you to Don, and what do you think?
Yeah, my first thought on the game was the Colts. Like when I was looking at it when it was 7. Even at 6.5, even at 6, I'm still thinking the Colts. Mm-hmm. I did see the stuff about DeForest Buckner, the defensive lineman. What they were saying is he's injured. He's been playing injured the last 3 or 4 weeks, and he's been killing everyone the last 3 or 4 weeks. Right. But they did say that it's an injury that's been getting worse. So that injury scares me a bit, but. And then the only other thing is I like how the Bills have started using Moss. He's been getting more carries, toward the end of the year, trying to get a little more balance. But I did come back again with this. I think the Bills have played some very high energy games.
Sure.
Last week and the week after that, and now you're getting to the playoffs. I know there's not going to be a crowd there, but you got to get to that next level. So I think at this point, I'm taking Colts plus the points at this point.
We are all Colts.
Woo-hoo.
Yeah. And I did say 7 earlier, but I don't see a single 7 left anymore. I still like the game at 6 or 6.5 as well.
Yeah. I already bet the 6.5, just FYI. Okay,
I would even probably get to 4. I would really have to start.
Yeah.
Doing something.
I do think that Governor Cuomo rescinded and he's allowing like 6,000 or 7,000 fans in the stadium. So
okay,
there will be some Bills Mafia there, but nearly not the same effect that they would have normally.
No, for sure. All right, well, the next game on the card is the Rams going to Seattle. It's a divisional matchup, NFC West battle. But in the playoffs, these guys already played twice this year. Seattle opened as a 5-point favorite at home and 43-point total. It's been bet down. Actually, you're showing 5. I'm showing more like 3.5 or 3, depending on the book. Still around that 43-point total. let me go over the injuries real quick. There are some significant ones. Jared Goff missed the game last week, but he did practice in a limited fashion, and I understand McVay is not telling who's going to start to be trickery. Cooper Kupp is going to miss the game, though, with COVID, is what I'm reading anyway, as well as Michael Brockers, the defensive end. But Andrew Whitworth is coming back, the offensive tackle, from what I saw on ESPN before the pod. On the Seattle side, Jalen Stanley, the defensive back, is out with a hamstring, and Shaquille Griffin is questionable with his hamstring. So the secondary is a little bit, dinged up for Seattle. So do the same. Action, what are you thinking?
Yeah, I mean, I already played the Rams in this game, and obviously the number has come down from there, but there's still plenty of 3.5s that I see on the screen. And despite Jared Goff's injury, I did read that he's expected to play, but like you said, McVay is playing it a little close to the vest. I'm not really sure that they're going to need much of Goff in this game. I project it to be a much lower scoring affair. I think the total's in the 42 range. And I think the key matchup for me is just those LA Rams secondary defenders. You've got, Jalen, name's escaping me now, who is likely going to be on Metcalf and lock him up. I think he's held him under 100 yards. Ramsey, thank you.
Sure.
He's held Metcalf under 100 yards in both games this season. And when you look back at the closing numbers for both of these games, just 2 weeks ago, they played in Seattle, and the game closed at Seattle -1. So just right there, I think there's value on the Rams.
Gotcha. I'll jump in. I did bet at 4.5, so I got a bigger number earlier. I'm with you on this one as well. It's always scary when we're together, Don, and we agree. But I'm on the Rams here, mainly because I think they're the better team. I know that the Seattle's played better defensively of late, especially against the run, which kind of scares me a little bit. But I don't know. I mean, Don, I'm curious to what you have to say about your kind of blitz percentages. You didn't go over this game, but, what does Seattle usually do? Do they blitz a lot? I mean, because that's our biggest fear with the Rams is Jared Goff turning the ball over. They're a great team if he doesn't turn the ball over.
No, first, like, I didn't do everything on this game, but my first reaction was to take Rams and the points. Is Akers? Is he playing?
I think he's. Let me double check the injury report. He believes he is going to play.
Because if he's healthy, I feel even better about it. And just all year, I am extremely impressed with the defensive coordinator on the Rams. He's an offshoot of Vic Fangio. He was the linebackers coach, so I really believe in what he does, and the stats that you see on Ramsey when he's playing, it's pretty incredible. So, no, I'm going towards the Rams.
So, Action, do you think that what number would you not? You'd have to get all the way down to that 1-2 that you saw previously in their last matchup. You still, even at 3, you'd be on the Rams.
Well, I mean, you certainly lose a bit of value going to the 3 because that opens up the opportunity for a push. But I would still play it at 3. I like the money line as well. Obviously, that's come down some this week. But I think it's going to be lower scoring. I played the first half under 21 points right now across the board. And I think that the Rams defense is going to be able to carry them in this game.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I didn't have them listed on the injury report, Cam Akers, so I think he's playing. And he might have been my threshold is usually did not practice. So he definitely practiced, or at least in a limited fashion.
Yeah, and the Seahawks defense, people were saying how they were garbage and they're okay. They are okay against the run, but just again, I haven't seen anything yet where I'm not taking the points.
Yeah, and I'll add to that too. Whenever Carlos Dunlap joined the team from the Bengals, you saw the pass rush play a lot better too. So the Seahawks defense has definitely been going upwards ever since midseason.
Right, exactly. Okay, well, the next game we've got the Buccaneers are going to the Washington football team, the under 500 team that made the playoffs. So let's see, that game's at night. Let's see, it's 7. I didn't list the time last one. So 8:15 Eastern on Saturday. Tampa opens an 8-point favorite, 46.5 point total. It's about the same, anywhere between 8.5 now, 45.5 point total. I think there are some pretty significant injuries on the Tampa side that I wanted to report this time. Before we talk about it, first they have this Jeremiah Ledbetter, the defensive end, is out with a calf. Devin White is on the COVID list right now. He's not supposed to play. Mike Evans did practice with his knee on a limited fashion, but he's going to be a game time decision. And then Carlton Davis, the cornerback, he did not practice. He has a groin injury. I don't have any significant injuries for Washington. Obviously, Smith has his calf issue, but he did practice, and so far this week. What do you think, Action?
Well, I don't really know what to do with this game, to be honest. I mean, you have a Washington team that snuck into the playoffs with a 7-9 record, and I think that their against the spread record was slightly worse than that, even. So it's a big number, though. What are you looking at? 8.5, 9 most places now. I'm just not sure that I can bet either side in this one. I would probably lean to the Bucks, though.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not. You're not a strong lean, but I love Washington. We've loved them a lot of this year. They won us some money. They lost us some money, but I definitely like this defense. We've talked about that front four, really 5 defensive linemen that can bring it, and we know that Brady against pressure from a down 4 has had trouble in his history. I'm not saying it's going to happen this game. So I'm probably not going to bet this game, but I definitely would lean to the 8.5 getting the points with Washington. But obviously Tampa in my index is the second best team, to be honest with you, because they closed the year so strong. So curious to hear what you have to say, Donnan.
When I first looked at every single game for the week, I think it was actually -6 with the Buccaneers, or -6.5 with the Buccaneers. Mm-hmm. And that was actually the first game where I said, maybe that's where I would take a favorite in this one. Then once it started getting up to that 8.5 number, and just as the weeks progressed, and the fact that you just said, White is out, right? If he's not playing, that's a bigger deal. And you're pretty spot on as far as with the pass rush, being able to get there. And I trust the hell out of Rivera to try to figure something out to get to him, because you can't play zone against Brady. He'll kill you.
Right.
So, the White being out, Davis, when Davis went out, that the corner, that was a big red flag for me when I was trying to decide on how to play with the Bucks. So I mean, at this point right now, I would take the Redskins plus 8.5.
Right, the Washington football team. Just teasing you, man. All right, so let's go to the Sunday.
I just got to add, I'm fascinated about the Tom Brady angle in this game, playing in primetime, which a lot have been reported that it's after his bedtime, 8 p.m.
We've talked about that.
And when you look back at the season, they went 1-3 straight up and 0-4 against the spread in primetime. And Brady has played like dog crap in every one of those games. Yes. So this would be certainly a trend that would be an interesting one to play, and to see if Tom Brady can bounce back this week on Saturday night.
Yeah, it'll be a big game to watch. The other factor I didn't even bring up that isn't really relevant to these two teams is that I believe the last 2 teams that made it at 7-9 in the playoffs won the playoff game, which is weird. So those teams that barely got in have made it. I think Washington's one of those teams next year I'm going to love even more, because I think this young defense is going to be elite. I mean, they're already top 3 or top 4. They're going to be the best defense next year. So they just got to figure out an offense, and they'll be good. Let's go to Sunday. We've got Baltimore, the leadoff game that's at 1:05 Eastern. They're going to Tennessee. Baltimore opened as a favorite, despite being on the road at 3.5, 54.5 point total. It's still 3.5 or so. I've seen 3 some places. It's up to 55 point total. Let's look at some of these injuries. They're not as significant in this one, although one of them is DJ Fluker for Baltimore with his the tackle with his knees questionable. Marlon Humphrey has a shoulder. He's questionable, and then maybe not as relevant. Sam Cook, the punter, is on the COVID list. And then Tennessee, though, they lost Aaron Brewer, the guard, for COVID. At least he's on the COVID list now. And then Dennis Kelly, the offensive tackle, has a knee issue, is questionable for the game. So, Action, let's lead you off here. What are you thinking in terms of this game?
This is probably my heaviest spot of the week. This is a number I was waiting around for on Sunday afternoon or evening when BetOnline posted these AFC matchups, I don't know if it was on purpose or on accident, but they posted Baltimore at Buffalo, coincidentally, and
Oh.
Indianapolis at Tennessee, I think it was.
Hmm.
And Baltimore immediately took money in this fictitious matchup against Buffalo, which I think led BetOnline and other odds makers to realize how the bettors were going to be looking at the Ravens going into this week. And you've seen already opened at 3 and moved out to 3.5 in a lot of spots. But I think that there's a good chance if you wait it out, you're going to see a 3 pop up in this game at somewhat of a reasonable juice, because I think there's a little bit of a battle going here between the sharps on either side, between Baltimore and Tennessee. But having said all that, I think that Baltimore is just on another level right now. This running game is really picking up with Jackson, and you finally have seen them start to use Dobbins more in the running game.
Mm-hmm.
So, and you could point to the last 2 matchups where Tennessee got them earlier this season in Baltimore and then last year in the playoffs. But I think that both of those games were just strange outcomes. You had a Baltimore team who next week had like 20 plus players on COVID. So
Right.
I think there's a potential that some of them were not at 100% in that matchup. And then last year in the playoffs, they had 7 turnovers and really just beat Tennessee all around in the box score. So I think they're going to get their revenge this year. And I love laying the points with Baltimore.
Okay. Would it surprise you, Action, that you follow me all season, that Baltimore is the best team in the Wegs index from the AFC?
Wow, that is surprising.
And I was surprised to see that too. And just Donnan, just the index is based on kind of what you're looking at, the yards for, yards against, points for, points against, turnover differential, stuff like that. Yeah. So bottom line is, I'm actually, I've been Chiefs, my Chiefs jersey's in the other room. I got the Bulls on today. I'm kind of considering, buying low on the futures for the Ravens in the Super Bowl here. I'm not getting too excited. They could lose this game, but I agree with you. They seem to be turning a corner. They're an underdog, and it's really just, can they stay even in a game or be ahead and not have Jackson have to drop back 50 times? Then they're going to win the game. So I agree with you. I haven't put a bet in on this. I was hoping to get a 3. It's still 3.5. So I'm on the Ravens. Donnan, any thoughts?
Did you say Humphreys is questionable, or
He's questionable.
He's questionable, and Jimmy Smith is not on the injury report at all?
Jimmy Smith was not on the report that I saw, but maybe I didn't look too far down.
Okay. Well, yeah. Love it if Jimmy Smith is playing. If Humphreys is playing, I'm big on that. Earlier this year, when Titans beat the Ravens, that was one of the games where the big defensive tackle on the Ravens did not play. I think he had two games where he was out, and that was one of them. And then when he came back, the Ravens have been kind of doing a lot better. Williams. So Williams is in this game. So, I was talking earlier about my initial impression was, taking the Buccaneers as the favorite, but this is, the game where I might take the favorite, because I don't know. I haven't dove enough into what the Titans defense has been doing, but they haven't been doing anything. So I hate the fact that these two teams are playing each other right now, because I love them both. I love the offense that the Titans have. Sure as hell I love the Ravens. I can't get enough of it. But yeah, if you were to ask me now, I would take the Ravens minus 3.5.
So Humphrey and Smith are both had limited practice today. The report updated. So Smith is questionable, but limited practice today as well as Humphrey.
Yeah, that would be me staring. If they were both playing, no question. But with those two, I'm a little scared.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's any question there's going to be points in this game between Tennessee's offense and their putrid defense. Oh, yeah. But I'm just not really sure that Tennessee will be able to get any stops, and I think that Baltimore will, and ultimately that should be the outcome.
Agreed. All right, let's move to the next game. This is the Bears at the 4:40 window. Bears going to New Orleans. New Orleans opened as a 9.5-point favorite, 48-point total. It's up to 10 now for the Saints at home, and 48-point total still. This is a tough one. Let me check out these injuries. There aren't a lot for the Saints. It's really the Bears. Roquan Smith didn't practice today with an elbow. Jalen Johnson did practice in a limited fashion with his shoulder, the corner, and Buster Skrine has been out for a couple weeks. He's got a concussion. He's questionable. On the New Orleans side, the only one I really noted was Nick Eason, the offensive guard, has a concussion. He's questionable. Everybody else is, practiced in some fashion. So, what do you think, Action? I mean, obviously, we're both Bears fans, Donnan and I, but you can be merciless.
This is one game where I actually don't have much at all. I don't have a single bet in my accounts on this one, so I'd be happy to step aside and hear what you guys have to say.
Yeah, I mean, my take is that 10 is a lot of points for a playoff game. I think the Bears, against better competition, have folded this year. I mean, they did it last week. They were in the game in the fourth quarter against the Packers. They were there. Then they got crushed in the end to get crushed by the spread. I don't love this game. The Saints really play a really good defensive front, and I don't like when the Bears, they're running the ball, but I don't think they're going to run the ball against the Saints. And we know what Trubisky does when he has to throw the ball too many times. So 10 is just a big number to lay. I probably will stay away, but I definitely would lean to the Saints, not necessarily the Bears. What do you say, Donnan, the beloved?
Well, I think throughout time I've not really thought rationally about any Bear game. And throughout ATS, I've never not taken the Bears plus the points or minus the
points.
Wait,
what's your shirt say? What does your shirt say? Oh, okay. There we go.
I'm not quite sure what year this is from, but you can get to Breeze, knock him down, get the ball out, get some turnovers, maybe do something different now that that Roquan's out, maybe send a little bit more pressure. So I'm taking the Bears.
Of course you are. Hey, we all have our weak spots,
Yeah.
All right, let's go to the last game of the NFL playoff wild card weekend. At the late game, the 8:15 Eastern spot. It's Cleveland against Pittsburgh. Rivalry matchup. They played last week. Cleveland beat them for the first time in centuries. But Pittsburgh is at home. They open as 3.5-point favorites, and a 47-point total. We're showing it up to 5.5-point favorites at home, anywhere between 4 and 5, 47-point total. There are some injuries of note and some coaching issues of note. Cleveland has really most of them. Olivier Vernon, defensive end, he tore his Achilles. He's out for the year. Nick Harris, the center, his knee injury took him out for the year. Ronnie Harrison has COVID. And then, of course, Kevin Stefanski also has COVID, right? Is that what we're reading here? And he's going to be able to. So what does this note? It says he has up to 90 minutes before the game with the team, even though he has COVID.
Yeah, virtually, of course. I don't think that they're going to be in the same room.
Face to face.
But
so the other ones for Pittsburgh, Joe Hayden is on the COVID list as well for the Steelers. So he'll be out. Vince Williams, the linebacker, he is a questionable tag with his quad. And the defensive lineman Tyson Alualu, the nose tackle, is also questionable with an ankle. But I also saw Juju Smith-Schuster pop up today with a questionable tag with a knee. He was not on the report earlier today. So what do you think, Action, in this game?
I mean, this is just classic Cleveland Browns, right? They make the playoffs for the first time in 20 years, and then their coach gets COVID and he can't be there. And I really think this is a huge loss. Before last Friday night, I was kind of not really of the opinion that these coaches not being around were impactful, but it was clear to me that Clemson offensive coordinator not being in the building was very impactful once Ohio State's defense made adjustments. And Kevin Stefanski has been like the entire play caller for the Browns all season long. And I think they're really going to miss him this weekend. And even before that, I was really liking the Steelers. You and I have really dogged on them the last couple of weeks because of the decline in the offense, but something really clicked with them in the locker room of the halftime of the Colts game, and Ben Roethlisberger started calling plays. And you saw last week that the backups led by Mason Rudolph hung with this Browns team. So I have no doubt that Pittsburgh will be able to win and cover this number again. And if there are 5 still available in Illinois, I might have to send a wire because I only see 6s here.
Yeah, it's 6. It's 6 at Rivers right now.
Okay.
So
Okay.
sorry, buddy. But if it goes down,
All right.
send me a whatever a Venmo or something.
Not a wire. If that was a joke, I think that's illegal.
Exactly. Send you a MoneyGram. Yeah, I think Pittsburgh's going to smash. Honestly, and it's hard. It's kind of like it's a narrative angle. It is not a handicap based on numbers. They are better in the index. Actually, to be honest with you, Cleveland is not very good in the index. It's kind of surprising because they had a really good year and they've been able to run the football and so on, but they're actually the second worst team to the Bears in the index. And I guess I'm not sure why that is. Maybe it's turnovers or defense, but either way, the Steelers, they just got to get right. Now I don't know. It's a divisional game, so that usually works against us when we get this big number. But I think the Steelers are going to show them who's boss this week after last week's loss, even though it was a close one. Any thoughts, Donnan?
Yeah, the corner on the Browns, Ward, is he out?
Let me double check his thing.
He had COVID. He had COVID last week, but I got the impression that he would be cleared in time for this one.
Okay, he had been out for a long time, and they had not been the same without him.
Mm-hmm.
I had thought that he was going to be out. Okay.
I got Denzel Ward illness COVID, so right now he's still on the COVID list. It came out on Sunday, so I don't know if he has enough time to clear it. Sometimes with this COVID protocol, it's confusing, but
yeah,
it's likely he'll miss the game.
Yeah, Browns have been kind of on that. I thought their defense would be okay. They really have been okay. They haven't been on a terrible slide like the Titans, but I just haven't been liking their defense as much, especially without Ward. Steelers, I think, they were worn out. They played all those games all back to back. I think they had a big sigh of relief once they came back and beat the Colts, and now they're believing in themselves and knowing they can do it. So at this point, I'm not high on the Browns.
Right. Gotcha.
So I'd probably go Steelers there.
All right. There's a favorite. We got a favorite. These guys I thought you guys loved underdogs. What's the deal here?
I haven't done the research. I haven't talked myself into the underdog yet.
Well, let's review.
Plenty of time.
Yeah.
Exactly. We've got some best bets listed so far. Colts plus 6.5 at Buffalo. Rams, it's not 4.5 anymore, but even at 3.5 at Seattle. I won't put Washington, even though that's mine. And then it sounds like Baltimore is the one we like the best in the favorites, but it sounds like we're getting behind the Steelers too. So were there any totals action that you wanted to point out? You were talking a little bit about the Titans Ravens game. You like the over in that one?
That number is a little too high for my blood, 55. Yeah. But I do like the first half under in the LA Rams and Seahawks game. And another one that I'm interested in is Indianapolis and Buffalo. I think the latest I saw was 51, which is a very key number in the NFL. And that's one where I also want to check the weather, being on the lake in Buffalo.
Okay. Yeah, in general, for me, the playoffs, it's all unders. I'm an under guy in the playoffs. I switch to full under, and it usually works out pretty good. But some of these games could be high scoring. Usually the wild card weekend could be literally wild. There could be a lot of points scored. So, well, let's jump ahead.
Also, before we jump off, you've seen a lot of upsets in this round in years past too. So if you like some of these dogs, I don't think there would be anything wrong with sprinkling a little bit on the money line as well.
We'll sprinkle. I like the sprinkles. All right. Well, let's talk a little bit of our last topic on the football championship in college. We've got a great matchup with Alabama against Ohio State. Ohio State did surprise, quote unquote, even though we talked about it off air. Actually, I tried to talk you off, Clemson. Bama is an 8-point favorite, and the total is 74.5. I've seen it maybe even the 75.5. You've listed Justin Fields has a rib issue, which he left the game at one point, and then Jalen Waddle may return in a limited role. So where are you leaning in this game, actually?
I don't really know what to do about the side. Obviously, Alabama has been a juggernaut this season, just 100% record, winning the games and against the spread. I think even all of the first halves as well. And their offense is not going to be stopped in this game. I know that's for sure, especially with that Ohio State defense. My handicap last week really had to do with that Ohio State secondary. After Michael Penix and Indiana put up a boatload of yards on them, I had every expectation that a good passing offense could do the same. and Trevor Lawrence just didn't have it last week. So I expect that Mac Jones and Devontae Smith and company will be able to score in pretty much every possession. And the question for me is whether or not Justin Fields and his offense can keep up.
Right. Well, my surprise in the game last week was that Ohio State stuffed Etienne. They really played great against the run. They chose we're gonna make Lawrence beat us, and he couldn't do it. I don't think Jones is all that great. It's just that the receivers are incredible. So agree with you. It's probably going to be a high scoring game. 8 is a weird number. I was hoping it'd be a little more actually, but I guess they played such a good game last week. I mean, I'd probably go with the dog here on the points, but I don't know. This may be a good live spot just to see how it plays out. And it looks like you like the first half over.
Yeah, I specifically think that the first half is going to be ripe for a lot more scoring. Alabama always puts up points in the first half, and assuming that Ohio State will be able to carry the torch as well, at least for some portion of the game, I think that the 37.5 right now, as it currently sits, is a much better play than the full game total, because I believe there is some game states where Alabama could get a hefty lead and really just look to sit on it in the second half.
Sure. Any thoughts, Donnan? I know you're probably not a college guy, but
I pay attention. Like, how many? Like, he had some the Ohio State quarterback had some interceptions against Indiana, didn't he? He had like 3 picks against them.
Correct.
I watched the whole Northwestern Ohio State game. He struggled against that. And then if he's got the injury in there, no, you said the line is 8.
8.
Yeah, I would be all over Alabama. I read somewhere it was Alabama. There were 30 yards in a cloud of dust.
That's true.
They're plus you give Saban a little extra time. Yeah, I would take the Alabama.
Roll Tide.
I think Wegs, you're onto something. A live bet might be a good plan for this game. You've got such a high total. You have got to imagine there's going to be a lot of touchdowns and very little field goals. So the trading in this game could go back and forth quite dramatically, and you might be able to find yourself on some good sides on both sides of this game. Right.
Absolutely. You heard it here. Well, first, I want to thank Donnan for sharing his method. I try not to steal it next year to beat you, but I'm trying every year. But no, thanks for joining us. It was great to have you. And
very, very happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
And yeah, I mean, I use that site end of year to get some stats. I didn't even think about it to use all those advanced stats. So we'll definitely use that, and hopefully, some of that. I know Action uses some of the, the money and the, the bet volume when we make some final picks for our contest. But I like that kind of graphic that you were showing us on that Vegas Insider site.
Yeah, that I've been looking at for years. Yeah, I love that.
Awesome. Well, hey, thanks for listening, everybody, and watching. We'll have like 3 new viewers with Donnan on. Follow us at Side Action Pod on Twitter. Follow me at Wegspool on Twitter and Instagram.
And follow me on Twitter at 31sroberts.
All right, everybody. Enjoy a wild card weekend. It should be a fun one, and hopefully win some cash.
Yeah, thanks again. Thanks again, Donnan, for coming on. That was excellent.
Thank you. Glad I could be here. Good luck making money.
All right.
Later.